professor said my analysis of the novel was completely wrong. I wrote the book. I was sitting in the back row of Professor Whitmore's contemporary literature seminar at Trying to Stay Invisible. The classroom smelled like old coffee, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while 20 students flipped through copies of The Drowning Season, my novel that had won the National Book Award 3 years ago. I'd enrolled in this graduate program under my legal first and middle name, Diana Ashford, instead of my pen name, Dia Mitchell. Nobody had connected the dots yet. I needed this. After the book tour madness and the constant public dissection of my work, I just wanted to be a student again, to hear what people really thought when they didn't know I was listening. Professor Whitmore was considered one of the leading experts on contemporary American fiction, and I was genuinely curious about his interpretation of my work. That curiosity was about to cost me everything. Professor Whitmore stood at the front of the class, holding up his marked copy of my book like it was evidence in a trial. What Mitchell fails to understand about her own protagonist is that Eleanor's drowning obsession isn't about trauma, it's about feminine hysteria. He said this with such confidence, such absolute certainty, that several students nodded and started taking notes. My pen froze on my notebook. I'd spent 2 years writing Eleanor's character, basing her fear of water on my own near-drowning experience at age 12. Every single scene was deliberately crafted to show how trauma reshapes your relationship with the world. Whitmore continued, pacing now, getting into his rhythm. The author clearly intended this as a metaphor for female weakness, the inability to overcome irrational fears. It's almost Freudian in its simplicity. A girl in the front row raised her hand and suggested that maybe the water symbolized Eleanor's attempt to reclaim her power. Whitmore laughed, actually laughed, and said, "That's a very undergraduate reading, Melissa. We're past surface-level interpretations here." I raised my hand slowly, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Whitmore glanced at me with mild interest, probably wondering why the quiet student in the back was suddenly participating. "Yes, Diana." I cleared my throat and kept my voice steady. "What if the drowning obsession is actually about PTSD? The text specifically mentions Eleanor's childhood incident in chapter 4, and throughout the book, her reactions align with trauma responses rather than hysteria." Whitmore's expression shifted from interest to condescension in about 2 seconds. He set the book down on his desk and crossed his arms. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you're conflating the character's backstory with the author's thematic intent. Mitchell herself has said in interviews that the book is about the human condition, not some personal trauma diary." He was quoting an interview I'd given to a magazine that had completely twisted my words. I'd actually said the book explores how personal trauma is part of the human condition, but they'd edited it to sound more pretentious and vague. But what if the interview was misrepresented? I pushed back, trying to keep my tone academic and neutral. "If you look at the structure of the narrative, every water scene is triggered by specific sensory details that mirror trauma flashbacks. That's not hysteria, that's clinically accurate PTSD representation." Whitmore actually rolled his eyes. He walked closer to my desk, and I could see other students shifting uncomfortably. "Diana, I've been teaching this novel for 2 years. I've published 3 papers on Mitchell's work. I've interviewed her twice for academic journals. I think I understand her intentions better than a first-semester graduate student who's reading the book for the first time." The classroom went dead silent. My face felt hot, and I knew I should just drop it, but something in me snapped. "What if you're wrong about what the author intended?" Whitmore's jaw tightened. "I'm not wrong. Mitchell is a talented writer, but like many young female authors, she doesn't fully grasp the literary traditions she's working within. That's not an insult. It's an observation. The text speaks for itself, regardless of what the author thinks she meant." The girl next to me, Priya, leaned over and whispered, "Just let it go. He's like this with everyone." But I couldn't let it go. And that's when things got out of control. The rest of the story is linked below or on my channel.